Gatekeeping. A controversial subject, or at the very least so we are repeatedly told, ironically enough, by the very self-same people whom, the moment they get so much as a whiff of power or influence, tend to slam the door shut and begin purging the house. That tendency alone seems like a damned solid argument in favor of some gatekeeping right there, to keep the most power-hungry and maniacal people out of a position where they can impose their tyranny upon others. But I'm going to go one step beyond here and ask a question. What if gatekeeping was not only not an evil, but perhaps it is simply just a natural and necessary defense mechanism to ensure basic quality control? Let me also specify a bit more here what I mean when I say gatekeeping. I don't mean that we should prevent people from engaging with these universes, to stop people from buying 40k miniatures or watching Star Wars movies. We don't have the power to do this, nor should anyone have the power to do this. But we should reserve the power to protect the settings that we love. Be it Star Wars, Star Trek, 40k, be it movies, video games, music, television series, books, etc., etc. Because at the end of the day, there is a reason why these things are popular. Star Wars is Star Wars because it is Star Wars, not despite it. People don't like Star Wars despite the lightsabers, despite Darth Vader, despite stormtroopers. These are all elements of a setting that combine to form a greater whole that so many people love. And so when somebody comes into that setting, embraces it, plays with it in all of its myriad forms, they should absolutely be welcomed. But when somebody comes into it and says, "Oh yeah, I really like this, but could we change this, this, and that?" they should be met with an insistent no. Because more often than not, if you've just joined a fandom and the first thing you can think of is how to change it, in all due likelihood you're not actually there because you love the setting. Now, of course, there are exceptions, in-universe exceptions. Not meant to please a particular group or make the setting more welcoming to a certain audience or sand down the edges to make it more palatable to the mainstream. All of those things are almost universally bad and seems to always create an inferior product. So far, no franchise has survived contact with the mainstream. Game of Thrones looked like it might just do it for a while, and then those last couple of seasons hit. Don't even get me started on Star Wars or Star Trek, which has turned into an action series now. In fact, we'll touch upon this a little bit later, but let me also elaborate a little bit on what I do mean with there is the possibility of changing settings for in-universe reasons. One of my pet peeves, for example, is a book in the Horus Heresy series called The Reflection Cracked. I loathe this book. I hate this book. The entire setting would be better off without this book, because it takes a really interesting, open-ended, cool character end, an actual finale to a character arc, tears it asunder and simply just places the character back in play for Deus Ex Machina reasons. I hate it a lot. In fact, there are quite a few things about 40k in recent memory. A certain warp squirrel comes to mind, for example, that I am not too fond of, and I will certainly argue against. But these are in-universe arguments. These are, why does this make sense from a universe perspective? Why doesn't it make sense? And would we be better off without it? Contrast this to the now rather infamous treatment of Luke Skywalker, the hero, the legend, the icon. The character that so many kids grew up wishing to be, right alongside Darth Vader. What treatment did he get in Disney's version of Star Wars? He was turned into an old, disheveled, hobo-esque character that abandoned all of his friends, his ideals, his morals, everything he once cherished and stood for, to lock himself away on some backwater planet in the middle of nowhere to suck green tit milk from alien monsters. How, by the God Emperor's ever prickly ball hairs, did anything even remotely resembling that happen? Why do we have a scene now where Luke Skywalker receives his lightsaber and then just tosses it away as if it was something filthy? Well, it is because the Star Wars setting, the universe and everything within it, is now in the hands of people who don't just not care about Star Wars. Oh, no. The people who wrote Luke Skywalker like that, that's not an act from ignorance or carelessness or just simple disregard. No, that is malice. That is active, genuine hatred of a character. That is not ignoring them or mistaking some minor detail. It is actively attempting to destroy a character, to tear the character down, and then, of course, kill the character, for the sole purpose of replacing him with their own. Rey, the cardboard box that speaks. The desert planet native that swims like a fish and wields the Force like no one before her, without so much as the faintest hint of instruction. And judging by the fate of so many other franchises, Star Trek being turned into little more than an action flick in STD or the movies, or the absolutely horrifyingly bad Lower Deck, if you haven't watched it, I would actually genuinely recommend find the first episode on some website of ill repute, just so you can see how low Star Trek has fallen. And then we have a recent example, and this one really does tower above all others. Let me show you here Captain America. I'm sure he requires no introduction. Most of you have probably heard of him, has read his comics, or at the very least watched his movies. He is an icon, a legend, and more than that, just look at him. This character is obviously a hero. Even if you know nothing about comic books, nothing about Captain America, one look at this character shows that this is not a thug, this is not a villain or an antagonist, this is a main character. He is fit, he is handsome, square-jawed, he looks brave, brazen, clear, and clean. The purpose of the character is absolutely obvious at the first glance. He is an icon, he is something to aspire to, he is a hero. Now let's have a look at 2021 Captain America. Aaron Fisher, the Captain America of the railways. A disheveled, scruffy-looking, dirty, scrawny child. That frankly, if you remove the star on his shield and on his goddamn overalls, would look more like a two-bit thug than a hero. I also can't get over how he didn't even take the bother to get a paper or a cardboard cutout or something so that he could actually paint the star properly on his shield, the very icon of the man he supposedly tries to emulate. And why does this happen? Why is this Captain America of 2021? Because people who have absolutely no interest in the setting, in Captain America, or making heroes in general, are not only allowed to make these characters, they're encouraged to do so. They're sought out to do so. Captain America fought the Nazis, the communists, supervillains like Red Skull. This guy, Captain America of 2021, he fights inequality. In one of the richest and freest countries in the entirety of human history, this hobo fights inequality. This is what a lack of gatekeeping gets us. Because again, make no mistake, this character was not designed by somebody who likes Captain America. Just like Marnus Calgar, a 40k character that recently got a 5-issue comic series, was killed in the second issue of his own comic and replaced with some 2-bit side character we had never heard of. The only reason somebody would do something like that is for the same reason somebody would denigrate and then kill off Luke Skywalker, to replace them with their own character, to impose themselves upon the setting. This is most commonly seen in, of course, the ideologues, as demonstrated with the Captain America of the Railways, whose primary defining character trait is, of course, that he's gay. Not fighting the Nazis, not being a symbol of hope or resistance, no. Where he likes to place his penis is his character trait. And even if we were to accept the lunatic idea that representation matters so much that gay people just couldn't get interested in a comic series unless the person they're reading about has the same sexual preferences as them, I would then simply ask the question, which icon would better represent you? If you had the choice, which one would you choose? Captain America or Disheveled Hobo Man? Don't answer that question. I already know the answer. And of course, this is no outlier, this is no exception to the rule. It seems that every franchise that hits the mainstream undergoes the exact same thing. 40k is in the early phases of it now, where Games Workshop, the owners of 40k and Warhammer, has hired a Hasbro executive to carry out their mainstream market strategy. Oh boy, I can't wait to see that. Yuck. And the reason for it all, of course, is simply because as a franchise grows, becomes larger and more popular, it also grows more profitable and attract people who are just interested in either the money or the prestige. For a lot of people, an upcoming franchise like 40k, for example, is ripe for exploitation. It's somewhere you can insert yourself and your own ideological agenda. Politicization being a frequent driving force in the transformation, quote-unquote, of many of these settings. Yet another example here, of course, we've got from Warhammer 40k. At no point previously had Games Workshop ever even so much as suggested or hinted at that they wouldn't want a certain group of people to purchase their plastic toy soldiers. Obviously not. Why would they want somebody to not buy their products? It's lunacy. And yet, the moment ideologues and politicization starts taking roots in the franchise, we quite quickly see the message, Warhammer is for everyone, but if you don't agree, you will not be missed. And it's no coincidence either that when these franchises and setting begin seeking a wider market, begin sanding down the edges and so on and attracting people from outside of the people who actually care about the setting and franchise, that they start closing the doors, that they start attacking fans. It is because people who don't care about the franchise is, quite simply, not going to produce good content for it, which is going to rile up the fandom. It's going to piss people off. It is going to annoy them as they receive an inferior product. Star Trek is an example of this. Star Wars is an example of this. 40k and its 17 Primaris Lieutenants is a wonderful example of this. And whereas a company that cares primarily for the setting, for the franchise and the universe run by fans and interested parties might look at this feedback and go, you know what, yeah, they're actually right. This isn't quite good enough, or we're missing out on certain points, or we're not treating our characters well enough. Let's see if we can fix this. These things are born out of a desire of improving the setting, of making it better. And of course, those who don't care about it or actively despise it won't do these things. They'll grow ever more defensive of criticism directed towards their characters, their franchise now, until you eventually arrive at the Marvel stage of things, where their writers and artists are frequently attacking fans on social media. Not a sign of a particularly healthy setting. But how can I be so sure that this is the problem? The so-called outsiders, as I keep calling them. A slightly uncharitable term, but one more than earned, I believe. Well, look at the franchises that we've talked about now. Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, and soon to follow, 40K. What has happened before the rapid degradation of all of these settings? They've gone mainstream. And at first blush, that might not necessarily sound like a bad thing. Surely more people enjoying something is just good, right? It's fine and dandy, it's just more happiness to spread around, and yes, ideally so, and technically speaking, there is nothing preventing a setting from continuing to create high-quality content for a mainstream market. But the seemingly inevitable reality of it is that once these settings become popular, they always keep trying to appeal to a wider and wider market, sanding down as many of the edges as possible, is the term I've been using, to try and draw in more and more people. And as you draw in more and more people, you draw in the people who aren't actually all that interested, the casual fans, as I've seen them described. Those who might pick up a toy here and there, buy a box of Space Marines maybe, watch a movie or two, and perhaps know the names of one or two characters, but not actually care about the setting beyond that at all. And since they have no real evolved relationship with it, they tend to be the ones who see no problems whatsoever in just changing a few things here and there, some minor adjustments, some more nudges to make it even more welcoming to an even broader audience. And so it simply just keeps going and going and going and going until what at first seems like a fairly minor departure from the norm becomes a huge one, made frequently. And the further nature of these things is that when one thing is changed, you kind of lose any arguments against changing further things. It might sound like a fallacy, a slippery slope, but let's again look at the franchises we've talked about. How do you arrive at how does faster than light speed travel work in Star Wars? Oh no, I don't actually care. I'm just gonna make up a character here that I really like, okay? And I'm gonna have her be a strong female character that sacrifices herself to save everyone else by ramming her ship at light speed into this other ginormous dumbass spaceship I designed, which, by the way, can't actually kill any of our heroes up until the point where I determine that my favorite character shall sacrifice herself for the good of all. Because their lasers, which they lob, by the way, don't have enough firepower to penetrate their shields. It's time we face reality and realize that we're not at the top of the slippery slope. We haven't just lost perches and started sliding. God, no. We're halfway down and rapidly picking up speed, soon to be launched into a pool of piranhas and alligators. And who knows, it might be far too late to do anything about it, but on the off chance that there might still be some hope, I say now that, you know what? Gatekeeping has only really been controversial because we have allowed the opposition to define the term, and then use it against us the moment they get in power. I say that gatekeeping is actually a great thing, something that we should have done a hell of a lot more of. And if we had, maybe the worst we'd have to ever worry about would be the Star Wars prequels. Dumb movies, to be sure, but compared to the recent trilogy, works of goddamned art. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon, hopefully with more little think pieces like this. Have a good day.